servant of God, Intercessor reveals how fasting can heal the body and soul. My story of instant healing. There was a time in my life when I felt completely broken, both physically and spiritually. My body was deteriorating, and my soul felt empty, like it had no purpose. I was consumed by exhaustion and illness, struggling every day to get through the motions of life. It was a constant battle with my health, my mind, and my spirit. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know where to turn. I had heard about the power of fasting, but I never really believed it could make such a profound impact. People would talk about the breakthroughs they experienced, but it seemed too simple, too radical, and too difficult. Could something as simple as fasting truly heal the body and restore the soul? I wasn't sure, but I was desperate. I decided to give it a try, to place my trust in God, and embark on a journey of fasting and prayer. The first days were the hardest. My body screamed for food, and my mind felt restless, but I held firm, praying constantly, seeking God's strength to carry me through this challenge. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I had to make a sacrifice. I had to put aside my own desires and submit to God's will, believing that He would guide me through. As the days passed, something began to shift within me. I felt lighter, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. The heaviness I had carried for so long started to lift. My thoughts became clearer, and I felt more connected to God than ever before. It was as if the distractions of the world were fading away, and all that remained was His presence. One evening, as I sat in prayer, something miraculous happened. A sense of peace washed over me, unlike anything I had ever experienced. I felt an overwhelming warmth fill my body, starting from the top of my head and spreading to the tips of my fingers and toes. It was as if God's healing touch had entered my body. In that moment, I knew that something powerful had shifted within me. The next day, I woke up feeling different, stronger, more vibrant, and full of life. My body, which had been weak and worn out, now felt energized and renewed. The pain that had plagued me for so long was gone, and I realized that I had experienced an instant healing, a healing that only God could have orchestrated. As I reflected on my experience, I realized that fasting had not only healed my body, but had also healed my soul. It had allowed me to draw closer to God, to hear His voice more clearly, and to experience His presence in a way I never had before. Fasting had been the key that unlocked the door to healing and restoration in my life. It wasn't just about abstaining from food. It was about surrendering everything to God. It was about recognizing that my strength came from Him alone, and that I couldn't heal myself without His intervention. I had to trust in His timing and His power, knowing that He was the one who could bring about the transformation I so desperately needed. I realized that fasting wasn't just a physical act. It was a spiritual discipline. It was a way to humble myself before God, to repent and to ask for His forgiveness. It was a way to break free from the chains that held me back and to step into the freedom He had promised me. As I continued to fast and pray, I began to see changes not only in my health but in my relationships, my work, and my purpose in life. God's healing touch didn't stop with my physical body. It extended to every area of my life, transforming me from the inside out. Now, I stand here today, completely healed, with a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper faith than I ever thought possible. I am a living testimony to the power of fasting and prayer, and I know that anyone who is willing to trust in God and step out in faith can experience the same healing. Fasting may not always be easy, but it is always worth it. When we choose to sacrifice for the sake of drawing closer to God, He meets us with His grace, His love, and His healing power. There is nothing too difficult for God, and no prayer too big for Him to answer. This is my story of how fasting healed my body and soul, and I believe it can do the same for you. If you're struggling with illness, with spiritual emptiness, or with any kind of pain, I encourage you to take that step of faith, trust God, and experience the miracle of His healing touch. As I continued to fast, I encountered moments of intense resistance, both in my spirit and in my physical body. The enemy didn't want me to experience the healing I was claiming, and he fought hard to make me doubt. But each time I felt weak, I turned to prayer. I would recite scriptures that spoke of God's promises of healing and restoration, reminding myself of His power over every sickness, every struggle. One day, during a particularly tough moment, I found myself sitting in the stillness of my home, wondering if I was truly worthy of God's healing. But as I meditated on His word, a verse stood out to me. By His wounds, we are healed. Isaiah 53:5. It was as if God was speaking directly to my heart, reassuring me that healing was already mine. I didn't have to earn it. It was a gift, a result of His love and sacrifice. I pressed on with renewed faith, trusting that the enemy's lies had no power over me. I was more determined than ever to experience the fullness of what God had for me. And slowly but surely, the symptoms of illness that had plagued me for years began to fade. What once felt like an insurmountable mountain was now a distant memory, as God's healing power took full effect in my life. But the physical healing was only part of the story. The spiritual transformation that took place during my fast was even more profound. I began to see my life through the lens of God's grace, understanding that His love was not based on my performance, but on His unchanging nature. I realized that fasting wasn't just about healing my body. It was about aligning my heart with His will, about understanding His purpose for my life. In the midst of my journey, God revealed areas of my life that needed healing beyond just the physical. He showed me relationships that were broken, bitterness that I had been holding on to, and areas of unforgiveness in my heart. Fasting gave me the clarity to see these things, and with each revelation, I brought them before God, asking for His forgiveness and His help in restoring what had been damaged. There were moments when I doubted my own ability to change, but God was always faithful to remind me that He was the one doing the work. It wasn't about my effort. It was about His power. His grace covered my weaknesses, and in my surrender, He brought healing and transformation that I could never have achieved on my own. As my fast came to an end, I looked back at the journey and marveled at the transformation that had taken place. I was no longer the person I was when I started. My health had been restored, but more importantly, my spirit had been revived. I had experienced the depth of God's love in a way I never had before. And I knew that this healing wasn't just a one-time event. It was the beginning of a new chapter in my life. Now, I share my testimony with others because I believe in the power of fasting to bring true healing, body, soul, and spirit. God is still in the business of miracles, and His healing touch is available to anyone who seeks it. No matter how impossible your situation may seem, I encourage you to take that step of faith. You don't have to do it alone. God is with you, and He is ready to meet you where you are. As I continue to walk in this newfound freedom, I know that fasting will always be a part of my life. It's a powerful tool that connects me to God, draws me closer to His heart, and strengthens my faith in ways I could never have imagined. It's not about the length of the fast, but about the depth of your relationship with God during that time. I can confidently say that fasting is not just a way to lose weight or detoxify the body. It's a divine opportunity to realign your heart with God's will. When you surrender your desires, your struggles, and your pain, He will meet you with grace, healing, and restoration. I encourage you to seek God's guidance as you embark on your own journey of fasting and prayer. Trust that He will reveal the areas in your life that need healing, and that He will provide the strength you need to overcome. With God, nothing is impossible. He is a God of miracles, and He will heal you, just as He healed me. Let this be the beginning of your own testimony. Step into the fullness of God's healing power and experience the transformation that comes from trusting in His promises. The journey may be challenging, but the reward is far greater than you could ever imagine. As I continued my fast, I began to see the fruits of my labor. What seemed like a difficult and impossible challenge had now become a lifeline. The emotional weight I had carried for years started to lift, and I felt a deep sense of peace settle within me. It wasn't just physical healing. It was spiritual, mental, and emotional restoration. The clarity that fasting brought was like a light in the darkness, helping me to see things from God's perspective. There were moments of profound breakthrough where I could feel God's presence in ways I had never felt before. In the quiet moments of my fast, I began to hear His voice more clearly. He spoke to me about things I had long neglected, about forgiveness, about trusting Him fully, and about letting go of the past. It was like He was gently guiding me, showing me the areas of my life that needed to be surrendered to Him. The transformation wasn't always immediate, and it didn't happen overnight. There were days when I felt discouraged, when I questioned whether my prayers were being heard, or when I felt weak in my body and spirit. But even in those moments, I knew that God was with me. I had committed to the fast, and I had committed to trusting Him, no matter the outcome. And then, in what felt like an instant, the healing I had long prayed for began to manifest in ways I could not deny. My body felt renewed, stronger, healthier, more vibrant. The aches and pains that had once plagued me seemed to disappear, and I could feel a physical lightness that I hadn't felt in years. But the real miracle wasn't just in the healing of my body. It was in the restoration of my soul. God's touch on my spirit was undeniable. I felt the heavy burden of guilt, shame, and regret lift off of me. The things that had once held me back, bitterness, unforgiveness, and resentment, no longer had a grip on me. I experienced a deep sense of freedom, as though I had been set free from chains I hadn't even realized were there. My heart was lighter, my mind clearer, and my soul at peace. The healing process also revealed deeper layers of my own heart, places where I had been hiding pain or unresolved issues. Fasting opened the door for God to bring these hidden wounds to the surface, so He could heal them. It was painful at times, but it was necessary. God doesn't just heal the surface, He goes deep into the root causes of our pain, so we can truly be free. Through fasting, I realized that healing is not just about the body. It's about the whole person. It's about surrendering our will to God and allowing Him to work in every area of our lives. I understood that fasting is a tool, but it is God's power that brings the true healing. It is His grace, His mercy, and His love that restore us completely. In the aftermath of my fast, I noticed a change in the way I viewed life. The little things that used to annoy me no longer seemed important. I had a new perspective, one that focused on the goodness of God and the blessings in my life, rather than on the challenges or hardships. Fasting helped me to appreciate the present moment and to trust that God had a plan for my future. As I shared my story with others, I could see the impact it had on them. People began to approach me, asking for prayer and guidance, and I was able to share the truth of God's healing power. My experience was no longer just my own. It became a testimony to others of how God can heal, restore, and renew. The more I fasted, the more I realized that healing is not a one-time event. It is a process, a journey of continuous surrender to God. Every fast, every prayer, every moment of silence before God brings us closer to the healing He has for us. It is a journey that requires patience, trust, and obedience. But it is a journey that leads to transformation. Today I stand before you as someone who has experienced the miracle of healing. My body, my soul, and my spirit have been made whole through the power of God's grace. I know that this healing is available to anyone who is willing to surrender their lives to Him and trust in His timing. No matter what you are facing, no matter how impossible it may seem, God is able to heal you. He is faithful, and His love never fails. I encourage you to take that step of faith. If you are struggling with illness, with emotional pain, or with spiritual dryness, I invite you to fast and seek God. Trust in His power, and know that He will meet you where you are. He is the God who heals, and there is nothing too difficult for Him. Fasting may not always be easy, but it is always worth it. It is a powerful tool that can bring about miraculous healing in your life. And as you walk in faith, you will experience the fullness of God's promises. You will be healed, restored, and transformed, just as I was. As I reflect on the journey I've taken, I realize that healing isn't just a moment. It's a process, a continuous surrendering of myself to God's will. Each fast brings me closer to understanding His heart, and each prayer reveals more of His goodness. What began as a desperate search for physical healing has transformed into a deep, abiding relationship with God. A relationship that transcends my circumstances and continues to grow stronger with every passing day. There have been times when I felt the weight of the world upon me again, moments when the struggles of life seemed to pull me down. But now, I know how to respond. I turn to God in prayer, I fast, and I remember the healing He's already done. I remind myself that the power of fasting isn't just in what we give up, it's in what we gain. The closeness to God, the renewal of our spirit, and the transformation that comes from a life fully surrendered to Him. In those moments of struggle, I've found comfort in knowing that I don't have to go through this life alone. God is with me, and He's always ready to heal, restore, and lead me back to peace. Fasting has taught me to depend on Him in ways I never thought possible. I've learned to let go of control, to trust in His timing, and to wait on His healing touch. As I continue this journey, I find that my healing is never just for me alone. Every experience, every testimony, every moment of breakthrough is meant to be shared. I have a responsibility to encourage others, to tell them about the power of fasting, and to lead them to the same healing I've experienced. It's not about me. It's about God's glory, His love, and His grace being made known to the world. Fasting has not only transformed my physical body, but it has also given me a deeper understanding of what it means to live a life surrendered to God. It has allowed me to focus less on the things of this world and more on the eternal things that matter most. I now live with a purpose, knowing that every day is an opportunity to glorify God, to serve others, and to walk in the freedom that comes from being healed by His touch. I've learned that God's healing isn't just about fixing what's broken. It's about restoring what was lost, renewing what was worn out, and bringing to life what was once dead. Healing comes in many forms. And while it may not always look the way we expect, it's always a work of God's hands. Whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, His healing power is complete and perfect. The more I've prayed and fasted, the more I've come to realize that healing is a holistic process. It's not just about treating symptoms. It's about addressing the root causes of pain, sickness, and brokenness. God cares about every aspect of our lives, our bodies, our hearts, and our souls, and He desires to restore all of it. Fasting gives us the opportunity to surrender all of these areas to Him, allowing Him to heal us in ways that go beyond what we can imagine. I've seen it in my own life. What started as a simple act of obedience, fasting in faith, has turned into a lifelong journey of healing, growth, and transformation. God's hand has touched every area of my life, and as I continue to seek Him, I know that He will continue to heal, restore, and guide me. Fasting, as I have learned, is not just about the physical act of abstaining from food or comforts. It's about opening up to God, allowing Him to speak into every part of who we are. It's about allowing Him to remove the things that hinder our spiritual growth and to make room for His presence in our lives. It's about aligning our will with His and trusting that His plans for us are always for our good. As you embark on your own journey of fasting, I encourage you to approach it with an open heart. Don't just focus on what you're giving up, but on what you're gaining. Intimacy with God, spiritual clarity, physical healing, and a life transformed by His power. He is faithful, and He will meet you where you are. Remember, you are not alone. God sees your struggles, your pain, and your heart. He knows your needs even before you ask. And when you choose to fast, to pray, and to seek Him with all your heart, you open the door to healing and restoration in ways you never thought possible. Your story, like mine, can be a testimony of God's miraculous power. He is the God who heals, the God who restores, and the God who makes all things new. Trust in Him, surrender your heart, and experience the healing He has for you. There is nothing too big, too small, or too broken for Him to heal. And as you walk in the healing He offers, remember that your journey doesn't end with one fast, one prayer, or one moment of breakthrough. It is an ongoing process of surrender, growth, and transformation. God is always at work in our lives, and the best is yet to come. As I reflect on all that God has done in my life, I stand in awe of His grace, His power, and His unending love. The journey of fasting and prayer has changed me in ways I could never have imagined. I've gone from a place of brokenness and despair to one of healing and wholeness. And it's all because of God's faithfulness. I now live with a deep sense of gratitude, knowing that the healing I received was not just a temporary fix. It was a transformation of the very core of who I am. I am not the same person I was before I started this journey. I am stronger, more resilient, and more connected to God than ever before. But more than that, I am more aware of His presence and His power in every moment of my life. Fasting has taught me the value of surrender. It has shown me that true healing comes not through my own strength, but through God's power. When I submit to Him, He does the work in me that I could never accomplish on my own. He heals not only my body, but my spirit, my emotions, and my mind. Through this experience, I've also learned that healing doesn't happen on our timeline. It happens on God's timeline. There were times when I was impatient, when I doubted, when I wondered if I would ever fully heal. But in those moments, God reminded me that His timing is perfect. He knew exactly when I needed His touch, and He knew exactly how to heal me in the way that would bring Him the most glory. And now, as I stand here today, I know that my healing is not the end. It is just the beginning. God has so much more in store for me, and I trust that He will continue to guide me, to heal me, and to transform me every step of the way. The journey of healing is ongoing, and with each new day, I draw closer to the fullness of what He has for my life. I encourage you to take this journey as well. If you are facing challenges in your health, your spirit, or your emotions, I invite you to trust in God's healing power. Fast and pray, surrender your heart to Him, and watch as He transforms your life. There is no healing too great for God, no wound too deep for His touch. He is the God who heals, and He is waiting for you to step into His healing embrace. The process may not always be easy. There will be times when it feels like you are not making progress, when you question whether God hears your prayers, or when the pain seems unbearable. But know this, God is with you. He hears every cry, sees every tear, and knows every pain. He is the ultimate healer, and His power is greater than anything you face. As you embark on your own journey of healing through fasting, remember that it's not about the act itself. It's about the relationship with God that is formed during that time. It's about trusting in His promises, relying on His strength, and surrendering to His will. When you do that, He will move in your life in ways you never thought possible. Healing is a gift, and God is ready to give it to you. So take that step of faith, trust in His power, and allow Him to heal you, body, soul, and spirit. Let this be your story of healing. Let this be the moment when you experience the fullness of God's love, grace, and restoration. Just as He healed me, He will heal you. And as you walk in that healing, remember, you are not alone. God is with you, now and always. And with that, I declare over your life, you are healed, restored, and made whole in the name of Jesus. Walk in the freedom that God has given you, and know that He is continuing the good work He has started in you.